Welcome to the Air Power Airwaves, the Air Power Manufacturing Solutions podcast series where we talk about manufacturing issues that impact you. Hello and welcome to another edition of Air Power Airwaves. Today I have two guests and a really big topic. I'm going to turn to my right for the special guest that's in-house from outside of Air Power. This is Mr. Nick Lewis. Nick,
what's going on,
put
guys?
it right here, man.
How we doing?
Doing good.
Thanks, Josh.
All right, so Nick, you are the business development manager for e-mobility. Now, first of all, you've been with the Air Power team as the Graco rep, working with us in the field for quite a while.
Yeah, probably about the last 7 years.
There's not many times that I've come to High Point to work on projects that you're not here.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like, you've been a part of the team for a long time. So,
Indeed.
Talk to me. There's been a recent shift from, I guess, the account manager position where you worked with us in the field, and you've moved to the business development manager of e-mobility.
Yeah. So,
Talk about that a little bit.
So e-mobility, first off, is electrification of vehicles, right?
Okay.
Whether it be planes, trains, automobiles, buses, anything you can think of, scooters, boats. And what my role is that business is a very growing market for all of us, as we see people like Tesla, Rivian, so on and so forth, hitting record numbers in sales. It's going to be the future.
What does Graco play in that?
So mainly related to the battery side of it and the assembly of the batteries. That's a big piece of it. And then also related to the drivetrain, putting motors together, things like that, potting, foam encapsulation, in-place gasketing, bonding surfaces one to the next, fireproofing being sprayed on it. All of those things being in place.
That's right. We had Matt Bergman in here. That just triggered me. We had Matt in here with Graco on a podcast on the AFD side of the business, and he was talking about the encapsulation of the batteries, because if they have a as he called it, a thermal event. You don't never want to say fire.
No.
If they have a thermal event, that keeps it contained so that you don't have a flaming auto-driven vehicle going down the road.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to turn to my left here really quick. Rodney Benfield. Rodney and I work together at Air Power. Rodney is a man with a special set of skills. He has been in the finishing industry for probably 35 years.
Altogether, probably 35.
Rough. And then also, how long have you been with Air Power?
33 years.
33 years. So you've seen a thing or two.
A couple, yeah.
You've seen growth of different types of technologies, and you guys have, there's been a lot happen in 33 years.
They have.
Yes, and a lot of people changes. So
A lot of people change, a lot of people stay the same.
That's right. Well, one thing that doesn't change is that Air Power and Graco work very well together with our customers. I know that for sure. I've been, again, I talked about the previous podcast, so we've had you guys in here before. We've had a great podcast with your AFD team, so got a lot to live up to over there, Nick. But I think you can do it.
It's all one team now, right, Travis?
Right.
Our sealing
That is
business
right.
and our liquid finishing business is the new industrial division.
That is
So
right.
we have looked at that same conversation where you say Air Power works well with Graco, not only in one space or the other, but collectively. And there was so much customer crossover, it was important to create better synergies there.
We could go down that rabbit hole, but basically, you had two different groups that were working with Air Power.
And calling on the same
And then calling on the same customers and having to make two appointments where you could have addressed everything, with one person going in or a couple people going in together and working together.
Right.
So, that happens. Even in our world, you have certain people that you answer to, that you report to. And sometimes that's how it's divided up when you hit the field. And every person that's got responsibilities to corporate has got to have everything coming to them, and so it happens to set it up that way. So I think Graco's got a learning curve probably or two, and just about how they deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, Rodney can tell you from his experience many years ago, it was all together at one point, probably 15, 18 years ago. That was when it started, somewhere in that range is when they started to break up into the divisions versus being generalists, is what they called them back then.
Okay.
And then
Joe Curley was there.
yep, it goes back to guys like Joe Curley and Donald Tilley and Greg Carmichael.
So the thought then was like, okay, let's get really specific. But I mean, honestly, you guys really have, and it's maybe you've reached a saturation point of knowledge with the different team members.
But you just get so busy and so much stuff to do, then I think that's why they split it up. But now they're realizing that we're going to see the same people. Why not?
Right.
Just do everything.
I'm looking forward to it. We just got off of our 2022 Vendor Expo event for Air Power, and it's our kind of like our sales meeting every year, and we had you guys in for that trade show, and there was a lot of energy around both of the Graco, brother sister brother sister type divisions. Yeah. There's still a lot of really good communication there. So, all right, today, if you have any questions, you could call 1-800-334-1001 or go online and see us online at our YouTube channel. Every podcast that we do is usually loaded onto YouTube, the Air Power Manufacturing Solutions YouTube channel first. And then we take the audio and it gets put into Buzzsprout for those that are listening. So YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's the first place you will see everything. Sometimes we talk about things. There are visuals because we filmed this podcast. And so if you are interested in something, if you're listening to this, you can always go to the YouTube channel and check it out. Or go to airpower-usa.com or airpower-airwaves.com for the podcast, or airpowerlive.com. Today we tackle Graco Plural Component Systems. Nick, give us a basic, just the real basic, what is a plural component system?
It is a system that's designed to take multiple components of some sort of a material, and mix those together on ratio. Most of those plural component coatings or adhesives, either one, need to be mixed at a given ratio. When I say a ratio, I'm talking 1-to-1, 2-to-1, 5-to-1, all the way up to 50-to-1 in many cases.
It's also mix it on demand as you need it, not all at one time.
Correct.
Because if you're mixing like in a pot scenario, you only have a window of time to use it. Well, it depends on the technology too.
Yeah, it's spray, or some people call it pot life, some people call it spray life. Spray life is how long you can sit there and it's still sprayable.
Correct.
Or they call it gel times, the other one, if we start getting into the adhesive world a little bit.
Yes.
So.
Now, we're going to be talking about numerous systems here. Are we also talking about multiple colors?
We could be, yes.
Okay. And
multiple colors and catalysts.
Yep.
Okay.
And then accelerators or reducers, things that influence the dry time or the openness of the material, or
3 or 4K. I guess.
or adjust the viscosity, any of those things. So viscosity being the thickness of the material.
Correct. All right. So let's do this. We got together ahead of time and we kind of put together an outline. So if you guys want to go down a rabbit hole at any point, please do so. We kind of do this so we can kind of control the topic. And I'm going to be pitching things out to these guys, and they don't have an outline in front of them, but they'll know the topics. So, mix on demand versus hot pot. So, I'm assuming that just by what you just said, both of you, that Plural Component Systems are mixing on demand. We get it when we need it.
Hot pot is the alternative to a Plural Component System. A hot pot is when you mix materials together and mix them up, and it's all, 4 gallons, 5 gallons, whatever you go to spray, depending on your pot life. But problem with that is, you got humans mixing it together.
Correct.
So, I don't know.
It's like baking in the kitchen, right? We get a recipe, and I go in there and I've got to put a cup of this in there, 2 cups of this, and I've got to mix it up, right? And that's my recipe that I'm trying to do.
Correct.
However, if I decide that I like a little bit more vanilla in my cookies, they're going to taste different than Rodney's, even though we use the same recipe.
Correct.
Right?
Or if you forget to put in one
The
part
vanilla,
of it,
yeah.
and then let's say the catalyst or the hardener, and then it doesn't dry. So the human error is the problem with hot potting. And the other thing is, 2 component is a chemical reaction. So as soon as you mix that together, it starts working. So as the time goes on, viscosity changes, the sheen can change,
Right.
many number of things can change. When you mix it on demand with a component system, you get the same thing every time. So it's the same time going out from the mixed manifold to the gun, and it's always the same.
And these materials may have what they consider to be a long pot life, an 8 hours or 4 hours, something like that before the viscosity increases in a lab size amount. But if I need 5 gallons of this across a 4-hour window and I mix up 5 gallons of this, I may find out that my pot life or spray life reduces exponentially, because going back to Rodney's chemical reaction, right? If I put a lot of stuff in one chemical reaction, it's generating heat, it's doing its thing. Well, that reaction is going to happen faster the bigger amount I put there.
Also,
Right?
that spray life or pot life changes as far as temperature, humidity, and all those can change the pot life also. So
Right.
if it's hot one day, it might work faster. So when you do Plural Component Systems, you take a lot of that out. The accuracy of a
Perfect.
hand mix is probably
10%, yeah, at most.
15% maybe. And with the Plural Component units, you can get down plus or minus 1%.
And I would imagine, one of the, we talked about that mix on demand. One of the biggest things is you get things mixed accurately. It's on demand, you get it as you need it, and your waste is reduced dramatically.
It's reduced, and it's pretty process repeatable, right? And people are really concerned about process control in our business. They want it to be the same thing over and over. That way they can expect the same result.
If you're talking to a customer, either of you, if you're talking to a customer in the field and you're pitching Plural Component versus hot potting, is there an industry standard or an industry number average given to the types of savings of, and I know this changes from customer to customer based on how much they're utilizing, how much they're actually spraying or dispensing, whatever. But is there a savings, like percentage attached to it? Like what's
There's always a return on investment with any choice that people make, right, in our business. We do have some standard tools that we utilize that give us some baseline questions talking about, how much do they mix up at a time, what's left over as far as waste stream afterwards, how long does it take them to clean up, how many reject parts, things like that are looked at. And then of course, cost of the coating that they're doing, the mixed coating with all the components mixed in at that ratio, the cost of the solvent or whatever cleaning agent they're using, and then of course, what does it cost them to dispose of that waste? So all of those things are factored in, and then we have good estimations based on our experience that can give us a discussion point, right, of here's what we expect your ROI to be conservatively. Then we can do things like Rodney and I've done before down in the Air Power lab or at the Graco lab, and we bring the customer's coating in, we put it on, say, a piece of equipment that we're recommending to them, and we load it up, we color change, we spray, we validate what we're telling the customer, so that then we have more of a hard number for them to make a choice.
The one thing is, color change, or time is the other thing you can say too. If you're hot potting it and you're mixing it together, then you gotta take that, and if you gotta change colors, you gotta waste that, pour it out, you gotta add, mix another one for a different color. With the plural components units, you can have color change, you can change colors in minutes.
Or seconds.
Seconds.
And depending on which unit you pick.
Yes.
Gotcha. We kind of touched on it. Common chemistries utilized in this system are resins and catalysts. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, when we talk about chemistries, we're talking about everything as far as what the actual chemical makeup of it is. You'll hear people talk about urethane materials, epoxy materials, silicones in some cases, even things that are related to water reducible urethanes, water-based 2K, different versions of that. There's anything you can imagine, right? And we've dealt with most of it, I would say. One of the two of us or all of us collectively.
All right. Material types. So there are, in this system, there are multiple components that you can put together. But let's go through the types of component systems, or not really material types. So there's plural component.
There's single component.
Single.
Start out with, right? Single component typically are either water-based or solvent-based. That's the baseline of it. Then you can diversify what solvents are in them, or what, portion water or things like that. And then you got
Two components.
Single to two.
Yep.
And then you could have three, which is usually some kind of accelerator or reducer, and then you could have,
Four
four
component.
Four
component.
component.
If you, maybe it's a accelerator and a reducer.
So
But
really-
they all can be water-based and solvent-based.
So any of these are referred to as plural component
Yep.
systems. We're going to get into the exact names of those units here in a moment and what they do. And we talked about the word proportioning when we were setting this up, the proportioning types. So let's go through that also. And there were three. It was automatic electric, and there was, or automatic electronic, a manual electronic, and manual mechanical. What are the differences in those?
Well, mechanical is basically, it's all mechanical. There's no electronic to it. It's, most time the mechanical or the Gracos is, one common air motor driving two pumps.
Okay.
And it's usually it's usually one color. It's usually a fixed ratio of whatever ratio you pick. They do have some,
Like a 2-to-1 or a whatever that is.
I guess you still have the HydroCat.
The HydroCat has been obsolete a few years ago.
Most mechanical is all fixed ratio.
It was
now.
replaced with what they call the M2K now, right?
Which is a fixed ratio.
It is a fixed ratio unit. Now on the sealant side, we do have some variable ratio and some, fixed ratio both.
Okay.
So those are more higher viscosity coatings that we're going to
Mechanical is the low end.
The
entry
manual
level,
mechanical.
Entry level, there's no true ratio assurance. Most
pot
time,
life.
no pot life alarm, no recipes.
There's no real brain working there. It's just you set up the physical function of
It's
it,
basically
and you hit go.
In these cases, it's a cylinder that we know
Right.
the displacement of that cylinder, and cylinder 1 is 100 cc's, cylinder 2 is 50 cc's, and we're at a 2-to-1, and they're going to move at the
Yep.
same rate to dispense that on ratio.
But they got their
Gotcha.
place. I mean, if you got one material and you spray it all the time, you never change colors. It's pretty simple and it
And the other
works.
thing is, especially if it's a very forgiving material as far as how much material variability you can have. Because over time, materials build up in pumps. Over time, they build up in hoses, regardless if they're single component, 2-component, what have you, right? Solids like to fall out because things don't stay in suspension. So your ratio assurance is not as consistent. The other thing is, that one air motor driving those 2 lowers, if I run out of catalyst and I'm not looking at it and paying
Yeah.
attention to it, it's going to keep pumping me resin all
Yep.
day, and
And
I'm
you
going
don't
to
know
put a
when
bunch
it
of bad
stopped.
parts, right?
The only thing you got to go by is gauges on there and the pressures. You know, if you got one that's 500 pounds and then this one here is supposed to be 500, but then it's going down to 0, then that's about the only way you know that you're basically out of material.
Without actually looking in the container to see that you're out of material.
All right.
So it's not the technology that Rodney and I lead with. Honestly, there are customers that want it and there are customers that fits for it, but that's not the first thing we lead with.
Gotcha. All right, well, let's talk about that one. You already mentioned M2K, right here. So let's talk about that, the mechanical proportioner. So M2K, now we're getting into some of the brand names of the proportioning systems, or the plural component systems. So M2K.
That's exactly what you say it is, mechanical 2K, right? And it works just like Rodney and I described.
We're talking one color,
typically.
One air motor driving 2 pumps.
Yep, 2 lowers.
And a fixed ratio. And
you're typically talking a low entry level price. You're typically around, the customer that may be intermittently using a 2K coating also would be a good thing. Maybe not a high volume user.
Well, I have a note here from our conversation where it says common chemistry a must.
Yes.
So does that basically mean that, we can't get really elaborate here? This is a pretty much workhorse of one thing. It's a master of one.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to take a urethane product and spray it in the morning, flush the system completely out, and now put a epoxy product in. You're going to create a lot of problems for yourself.
Yeah. And you wouldn't want to do that with electronic portions either, unless there is one that you can do that, and we'll get to that.
Is that where O-rings and different types of things can be affected?
Basically, it just, they don't lock each other, so
Yeah.
it makes a
Cottage cheese
mess, basically.
Okay.
Stops up filters, stops up tips,
Pumps, everything.
pumps, everything. So it's not a
Well,
great practice.
let's move on to the next one. ProMix 2KE.
It's the Graco's entry-level electronic proportioner.
Okay.
It does have ratio assurance, plus minus 1%. You can do 3 colors, 1 catalyst. You can do 2 operators, or you can do 1 operator, 1 gun flush box.
It's offered 2 ways, in a meter-based system or a pump-based system. When we talk about pump-based, we're using similar technologies to that mechanical proportioner, but we're adding some other things to it, like linear transducers, another position of those, pressure transducers to, instead of reading the gauge, those transducers are reading what the pressure is, and giving you alarms or, indicators of, hey, there's a problem over here.
Yep.
So it makes it a little bit more intelligent, still fairly entry level.
You can have recipes, you can have, alarm list, where you can go back and see what's wrong with the system. You can get some data off the system, as far as material usage.
Per job, if they want to do
job.
the job, reset button between each part that they spray.
But it's not really, it's a manual system only, it's not an automatic system. It doesn't, you really can't tie it into a
PLC or
PLC or
robot.
anything like that, but you can get information off of it.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's a manual process. You're gonna go out with a USB stick, jump drive, whatever you'd like to call it. You're gonna plug it into the side of the machine. You're gonna wait for it to give you that data. You're gonna pull it out, take it back to your PC, plug in, and get that information. Which in some cases, some manufacturing facilities will not let people utilize those jump drives. So it's not always an option for everybody.
Gotcha.
But that is the only way to extract that data, unless you're going out there on a regular cadence and pulling it off the screen and writing it down.
Okay.
And that is an option on the unit too, it doesn't automatically come with the USB.
Correct.
So for that, the ProMix 2KE, for those of you that are watching or listening, we know what ProMix stands for, but the 2KE again was 2 component, and then easy entry application. The E stands for easy entry application. All right, we're going to shift to the ProMix 2KS. And in this case, while we're just talking about that, the S stands for smart technology.
So, either way.
Go ahead, Slim.
The 2KS is a more advanced electronic proportioner. You can do up to 30 colors. You can do 4 catalysts. And to back up on the 2KE, you can do a ratio from up to 30 to 1. On the 2KS, you can do 50 to 1, if I'm mistaken. You can do 2 operators, 2 gun flush box. You can tie it into a PLC and get information. You can actually look at the system live as it's working.
On an automatic system, if you tie it into a robot or a reciprocator
Yeah, it can be
or a
automatic.
fixed gun even that's automated, you can add flow control for a single applicator. So you get into closed loop fluid control, which allows you to repeat a common flow rate over and over, even if you have some variances in temperature and material throughout the day, humidity, heat, related to what Rodney spoke about earlier.
And then,
But it's just like the 2KE meter-based system. It's meter-based only, where we're using gear meters. And those gear meters are going to be, the material passes through them. Each gear tooth, if we're using a tooth gear, there's a variance of different meters, is going to have a certain volume material that passes through there in between those teeth, and it measures that, and it's able to utilize that to tell dispense valves when to open and close to maintain that ratio assurance.
Okay.
If it can't maintain that, it will stop the system, it will alarm out and tell you, typically a 3-digit code, that this problem is happening, and you have to open up the manual, you have to look in that manual, and you have to determine, here's some troubleshooting information in order to resolve that. But these are both passive systems, so all of their pressure is driven from upstream. The pumps next to it, or the pumps in the paint kitchen, what have you, are what's generating the pressure to get it all the way out to the applicator and through that unit.
okay.
And the 2KS can be, you start with a manual unit, you can upgrade that to automatic, then you can upgrade that to a 3K.
The 3KS.
Yes.
So let's talk about the 3KS, because that's our next one. What's different about the 3KS from the 2KS?
Well, basically it has another leg to it or meter to it that you can add a accelerator or reducer
Okay.
or whatever. And also on the 2KS, you can also add a solvent meter if you want to meter your solvent, or keep track of your solvent.
And I mean, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. You guys, I've actually seen your systems in plants that I'm pretty sure we're just there to monitor solvent.
Yeah, that gets into really our informer, was what it was called previously. Now it's tied to the 1KE system.
Okay.
So that's one of the things we talked about previously is single component or 1K coatings. We do have a system called the 1KE, the Pro Control, and what it's designed to do is simply either monitor in step 1, or you can evolve it all the way up to closed loop fluid control or closed loop pressure control for manual applications and automatic applications.
And can't that waste or usage, let's just call it usage, be tied to specific operators?
It can be to a point, yes, depending on how that it's set up. We have some customers that they have a large flow meter on their solvent line coming out of their paint kitchen before it distributes, because all they care about is how much total solvent did they use, right? We have other customers that choose to put individual meters at each workstation, right, where a single operator is going to be, and track it based on that work area.
Yep. All right, let's talk about ProMix PD. Want to go through it?
Yeah, so the
PD means?
positive displacement.
That's correct. All right.
So the PD system is the high level of a Graco plural component proportioners. It's where the other systems are a passive meter based, the PD is a positive displacement pump. So what that does, it does a couple things, where the other meter based systems, they relies on the pressure from the pump room. So you might have to have a ratio or a 3-to-1, 4-to-1 pump to get the pressure to feed all the way out through the lines and through the meters and through the mixed manifold and static mixer. Where the PD system, you may be able to feed it with a low ratio pump, because on the low pressure system, whatever you feed into it, you feed 50 pounds, you can actually up that by 100 pounds.
Okay.
On the high pressure system, you can do it, you can up it 500 pounds. And also what the positive displacement pumps, you don't have to have mixed material fluid regulators. It has a whole lot more process control. You can do 30 colors, you can do 4 catalysts. It can be a 1K, it can be a 2K, it can be a 3K, it can be a 4K, it can be manual, it can be automatic. You can do mix at the wall, which would be all the materials run out to a mixed manifold on the wall, then you have a mixed material line running out to either a robot or a manual.
Or an operator.
Operator, either way. The PD has mix at the belt, which is, you'd have, if you had, say, 4 colors, you'd have 4 hose bundles, 4 mixed manifolds, 4 guns. And what that allows you to do, it's just a shorter mixed material. It mixes from the manifold through a static mixer out to the applicator, which would be 2 to 4 foot. And so it's very little waste and very little time to change colors.
Okay. So we're talking about multiple chemistries through the same unit, and you can do up to 30 colors on that ProMix PD.
You can, and like you said, multiple. The PD standard unit comes with 2 pumps, one for your catalyst, one for your resin. You could do a 4-pump system where you could have a catalyst pump and a resin pump for your epoxy primer, and then a catalyst pump and a resin pump for your urethane, and do the different materials in the same unit.
Okay.
So basically, he just said we can run 2 different chemistries with one control platform of a PD system, which none of the others can do, right? The other thing you can do with those 4 pump systems is you can have a dual mix or a dual panel where you can run 2 operators independent on that system, right? Versus having to buy 2 PD2Ks, you can buy 1 PD dual mix, 4 pumps, and this operator runs off these 2 pumps, this operator runs off these 2 pumps.
Gotcha.
So it gives you a lot of flexibility. It's probably the most versatile unit of all. You can buy it at any level of this. You can buy the simple 0500 and make it a 1K system, and then evolve that through nothing more than adding on hardware and potentially flashing a new software in there. And that allows you to expand it to now 2-component mix on demand, or 3-component mix on demand, or 4-component mix on demand. And I don't want to use Rodney as my painter anymore. I want Rodney to be my robot tech, and I'm going to have that machine hooked to a robot. So now that machine can evolve into automation and allow it to tie into a robot. And you got closed loop fluid control with that machine on that robot.
Gotcha.
So.
All right, couple things to close out here. First of all, you can find this podcast 2 places. Video version on the Air Power YouTube channel. So go to YouTube, search Air Power or Air Power Manufacturing Solutions. You're going to find the Air Power page. Every video we've ever done is on that YouTube channel. You can also go to airpowerairwaves.com and get access to the video versions. 800-334-1001 is the phone number to call, and just ask for help, whatever you need. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all of the above. There might be one I'm not remembering, but
I think that's all.
we are all over social media land. So I'm going to close this one out like I do every other podcast, and I'm going to tell you to manufacture it a great day.
Thank you for joining the Air Power Airwaves podcast. Air Power Airwaves is a production of Air Power Inc. and Air Power Live Studios and is hosted by Travis Stirewalt. For more information, please visit airpowerairwaves.com. For more information on all of our products, brands, and manufacturing solutions, please visit airpower-usa.com. If you have any questions or need product support, please contact Air Power at 1-800-334-1001.